good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gary Carter. I'm an independent consultant and a non-executive board member of K7, the insight and intelligence company based in Manchester and serving the global community. And also I'm a non-executive director of Clock, a creative studio based in Helsinki. And just to disclose something, I worked on one of the projects today, right? So in the interest of transparency. This is a very unusual panel in some ways. First of all, I'm joined by two parties who would not usually appear at such an event. We have two leading Nordic advertising agencies here, represented by Mikko, the Executive Creative Director from TBWA Helsinki, and Petronella, the CEO of Åkestam Holst, the Swedish agency. And I'm joined by two more or less traditional players from this part of the ecosystem, Iain Wimbush from Rumpus Media in the UK, and Alex Connock, the CEO of Missile, who has had a long background, a long history, and a long fascination with the relationship between brands and entertainment. For as long as I've been in television, which is far too long, there have been conversations about a shift towards a closer relationship between producers and brands. And I think it's fair to say, as Iain was pointing out earlier when we were talking our way through this session, that there has traditionally been quite a lot of prejudice about that relationship. And indeed, a lot of prejudice also expressed by broadcasters when dealing with programs that have been funded or directly sponsored by advertisers. This whole system is being disrupted currently by the power of digital, as we'll explore. And I think that what we see is, on the one hand, advertising agencies becoming more like traditional entertainment companies on behalf of their clients, and maybe brands are becoming more like media houses than consumer goods houses. And at the same time, as the advertising ecosystem, borrow from the genres and the formats that we have, we are also starting to make shows with brands more directly and learn from that experience. I suppose one of the questions for this panel ultimately is whether the agencies and the advertising producers are learning more quickly about us than we are learning about them. So, I'd like to start off by introducing Alex Connock, a long-standing colleague of mine, who, unusually for being an entertainment producer, is also an academic and has studied the transformation of the relationship between brands and entertainment. So, Alex, perhaps you'd like to introduce Missile to us, and then just let's have a conversation about your work in this area.
Yeah, so I've been through 3 journeys with independent companies over the last 20 years, and I left Endemol this time last year, and just before I sort of jumped off, I thought, well, why don't I just consider what the world is actually like now? And I think the fundamental change that's occurred is that the commercial advertising, which has underpinned most of the production that is sold at MIP, is in decline. There's no doubt about it. It's dropping like this. And it's being attacked on 2 fronts, being attacked by what they call pay-per-click advertising, which is Facebook and Google essentially, and by e-commerce. And just to give you a scale of it, the e-commerce industry this year is $2.7 thousand billion, which is an absolutely vast amount. And so I think if we've been to sessions like this for maybe the past decade or even 15 years, it's been kind of a what if, maybe we should do this, it would be nice if brands could get involved in content. Now it's pretty much existential. Content makers are going to have to get together with brands. And so I sort of went out and sort of thought to myself, what would that be like? And one of the things I looked at is e-commerce and video and e-commerce and TV shows and what can be done. And I think what I found is that there is a burgeoning industry out there where you're going to find that shoppability is going to get involved with entertainment.
And can you've talked very eloquently about the impact of digital in creating a real-time economy and what that means for producers. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, I think there's a fundamental sort of perceptive gap that I noticed at MIP as I go around this time is that people are selling futures. So they're selling a TV show and saying you can be zeitgeisty in 9 months' time if you license my format. And I think that in the past that used to work quite well. But the problem is the competition aren't acting like that anymore. So if you go to any of the main social channels, they will be sitting at 10 o'clock in the morning thinking about what video they're going to create that day and put up that day. And so if you're looking for a fundamental reason why the youth are not engaging with commercial TV and linear TV anymore, and that's a fact, they are not, One of the reasons is because TV is not zeitgeisty in the way that social video is. And that's a function of this real-time economy where all expectations are for instant delivery. So literally instant delivery from Amazon Prime or Deliveroo, instant price optimization from any airline that you might look at. Everything has to be an instant answer now. And I think TV has a fundamental creative challenge in that TV doesn't really feel that real-time at the moment to that youth audience, which is why they're disengaging.
At the same time, the amount of video and its consumption is exploding, right?
Yeah, that was the bad news. The good news is, the more you study it, the more you realize that the people in this room with the skills to make convincing video have the ultimate commodity. If you think about it, all the main tropes of the 21st century are about video. So Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, fake news, Premiership football, they are all driven by video. Video is a massive amplifier of success. And so this industry, if it engages with that kind of real-time commercial world, will do extremely well because it has the oil to power those engines.
But at the same time, it implies a kind of generalization of technical experience, doesn't it? Because the demands of the screens, the demands of delivery, these are all changing. So the need for storytelling itself is growing, but so is the need for greater and greater technological flexibility.
These days, everyone's a storyteller. In fact, companies like Microsoft and Unilever literally have chief storytellers. And I think one of the things I've realized is that nowadays, retailers are all content producers, and content producers can all be retailers. And so there's been a merging of those two industries, and you're seeing it everywhere you go in your life, from your Instagram feed to what's on Amazon and so forth. It's a tremendous opportunity that's just taking off now, and that makes this session much more relevant now than it would have been even 2 years ago.
All right, thank you very much. For Mikko and Petronella, before we go any further, does this description of a world sound familiar to you, or does it sound totally foreign, what Alex is describing?
Yes, I would say that is exactly what we've been living with for the past, I would say, 5 to 6 years already, with the transition at least, because brands are becoming entertainers. They're not just anymore shouting at you with their commercial messages, but they need to be interesting beneath the products that they're selling. There needs to be believability, there needs to be a story, and there needs to be a mission and a purpose for the brand. So yes, I think we're talking about exactly how the world is now sort of lying.
Do you agree, Petronella?
I do.
Yes.
Is this on?
Maybe it should be.
Okay. Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I do. But like Åkestam, for example, we've been around for 20 years, and we had this experiment when we started. Okay, can you combine human values, a human workplace, with a world-class creativity? So for us, our core product has always been sort of creative solutions to help brands and products to be known, liked, and bought. And we're still doing that, but we are using different tools now. But it has always been about the narrative. But now you have, all these different channels to work with. And yes, I agree. Everything is, everyone is a storyteller. But now you need to be a really good storyteller to break through, sort of. Yeah.
Good. Iain, so tell us a little bit about Rumpus and introduce driving school, and then we'll go to the...
Is this on? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll go to the clip.
So I set up Rumpus 5 years ago with my partner Emily, and we specialise in sort of funny, factual content, but we realised pretty early that we needed to diversify and if we're going to survive, essentially. And one point of diversification isn't just sort of diversifying in genre, but also in, output and places where we could actually make content. And so we got into discussions with different agencies about a potential for different projects. And we made a project for ASOS, we made a project with NHS, and then we landed at driving school, which came via a tender, Channel 4 tender, which we won, which was great.
Was the brand attached at that stage?
Yes. So the brand initially approached Channel 4 with a chunk of money and said, we want to make a series on E4 to appeal to 16 to 24-year-olds.
Okay, can we look at the clip?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's show Iain's clip.
Learning to drive is a rite of passage.
Can you turn it up?
A pivotal moment in one's life.
Volume.
But if you're a celebrity, sadly, that counts for absolutely nothing.
Hazard Central,
Can you turn it up more?
I'm a learner driver.
Welcome to the All-Star Driving School, where we take celebrities who can't drive and put them through an intensive driving course.
Good luck, Lou. Thanks.
In just 1 week, our crack team of driving instructors will help our stars mirror, signal and scream their way to test day. Producing genuine car crash television. But the All-Star Driving School is no ordinary driving school. We'll invite friends and family along for the ride to help our instructors with their lessons.
Wait for it. Whoa.
And every day our celebrity learners will be given specially tailored challenges.
I'm taking you on a road trip!
To throw them out of their comfort zones.
The big box!
Right now!
Box!
And occasionally just to give us the opportunity to laugh at them. Over the course of just 1 week, we'll see how they cope with the pressures of an intensive driving course.
Nerves are shot, you guys. Gonna foul!
How they cope with their instructors.
I promise you, you can do this. I've got massive faith in you.
But most importantly, how they cope on test day.
I'm gonna stop you.
Really?
Yep.
Will our celebrities hold it together
I can feel the nerves and the butterflies.
or fall apart?
I don't want to do it.
Either way, we'll be there to help celebrate their joy
I owe all to you, Maxine.
or help wipe away the tears.
Absolutely gutted, to be fair.
All-Star Driving School is the brand new format that guarantees laughter, emotion,
Come here, you.
and genuine jeopardy
Oh my God!
as our famous faces embark on a journey that we can all relate to.
Why are you looking like that for? Are we on a one-way road or something? Oh, we're not, are we?
This is All-Star Driving School.
Who passed? I passed. Who passed? I passed. Oh, I passed. I can't believe that. Oh, yeah.
The UK premiere on E4 increased the slot average by 48% and 90% amongst 16 to 34-year-olds. And amongst this age group, it's currently E4's best performing 730 commission.
And it's just been renewed, right?
Yeah, we've just got a second series. We just had the first meeting about it last week.
Okay. Can we have the lights up? Yeah, great. So here you're working for two clients, essentially, right? You have your traditional client, being Channel 4, in a sense, and you have a secondary client, or indeed a primary client in some ways, because they're putting up the money. Talk to me about the engagement with Suzuki as a brand and whether you went through the agency and what that process was like for you as a producer, trying to understand the language and the focus on values in the brand.
Well, as you mentioned at the start, there was the first thing that we needed to do was cast off our snobberies or prejudices about working with brands.
Did you feel dirty, Iain?
A little, but not for long, because fortunately, what was lucky with the brand is that they were incredibly transparent about their needs and their brand, the expectations of the brand, and happily those expectations, there was a synergy with the expectations of the channel. So the meetings were initially extensive with the brand, and rightly so, because we needed to absolutely engage with what the messaging was. And just to go back to what we said about the second series, the first meeting we had last week began with a 2-hour briefing on the car market in 2018, which is something that you, obviously, as a TV producer, you would never even conceive of doing.
Well, you wouldn't even, you know, we say that, you wouldn't even get a 2-hour briefing about the television landscape from a broadcaster, would you? I mean,
no.
If they're your primary brand, but of course for agencies this is super common.
Yeah, but for us, hearing this is mind blowing. You know, I'm never, you know, because that's what we do for us. As a long-term relationships with our clients, that's everything.
Yeah, I think that's the starting point of everything for us. Like that is where we stand in the beginning.
But for us, it was a case of essentially rewinding. I mean, usually you've got the idea, let's go and make it. But there was almost like a prologue to the pre-production, which is understanding exactly the messaging. And actually, it really helps in the production of the TV.
In what
format.
way? So you're saying that the clarity that Suzuki provided you about the brand's values and the messaging that they required from the show helped you in production. In what way?
Well, it meant that tonally we had several filters which we knew we had to thrust the talent through, and if they met the core values of Suzuki, then they were probably going to be right for the show, because we knew that those are also the core values that E4 had, which was good, but not just the talent. There was the three key messages from that from the series were warmth, a sense of friendship, and a sense of adventure. And so with each point, at every single beat of the format, we were looking to fulfill those desires from Suzuki.
So the idea of applying brand language to television programming is something that has gathered some momentum. I mean, most of the big houses like Endemol Shine, Fremantle, particularly perhaps Endemol Shine, have brand guardians dealing with their biggest franchises like MasterChef, right? So they're in the search of consistency of messaging and consistency of brand value. But most companies don't think like that about their television shows. Has this changed the way you would develop shows in the future?
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, and mainly because we're now, from this point forth, as a company, going to be looking at every program we make, and actually are making, in terms of not just the standalone program, the 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or the series, but as an entity which can live on social media and beyond. And I think that is incredibly important, and that is the reason that I think that, or one of the reasons that the format that we produced did so well, because it performed brilliantly online, because Suzuki had done data research into the talent that we had and knew that they would perform well when they were tweeting and Instagramming.
Okay, so the idea of gaining clarity about the values of what you're trying to produce, you think will influence you, because when you come to production, it makes the proposition much clearer in a sense. So you've adopted some of the language of brands. Alex, when you started making brand-funded material, not at Missile, but previously in your career, did you struggle to embrace that language, the language of advertising, the language of marketing?
Well, no, I think I did one really interesting thing about 4 years ago, is where I was at Oxford. We decided to try and work out the moment of brand integration when the audience get annoyed, which was really interesting. And so often you find that people have quite a facile approach to this, and they say, audiences won't like a brand in a piece of television or a piece of content. You know, they just don't relate to that. And quite a lot of TV channels are still very snobbish about that. I remember there was a previous guy running ITV who flatly said, I will never do a branded entertainment program, for example. And so what we did is we created television shows and then put more and more and more branding in, and then market researched them on audiences in the UK, Hong Kong, and America to actually find out what was the moment.
What was the tolerance?
Yeah, and what was fascinating is how high that tolerance was. It was slightly higher in Hong Kong and the US than in the UK, and that's probably because those two markets are more tolerant generally and more experienced in brand integration, but they were remarkably high. And we got to the point where there was a entertainment show sponsored by a soft drinks company where we had the chairman of the soft drinks company wearing a T-shirt saying the name of the soft drinks company, presenting a sort of Pepsi-branded trophy to the winner, and people were not switching off. But there was a cliff edge. There was a moment when you just put too much brand in and suddenly you fell off a cliff. So if you're engaged in any of this activity, the test you've got to apply to yourself is quite a sophisticated one. It's not, does it matter if we have a brand in? It's fairly obvious that you can have brands in shows. It's, are we honest about it? And have we worked out that point of brand integration, after which we have a disastrous loss of faith from the audience? Okay, so a very good segue to the advertising side of the table, and particularly perhaps Petronella. Petronella, you're the CEO of Åkestam Holst, a 20-year-old leading Swedish advertising agency, and indeed recognized by Adweek as one of the leading international agencies currently. And you are in the fortunate position of having, and I'm sure deserved position, of having Ikea as your client. Perhaps you can just
talk to us a bit about the agency briefly, and then and then we'll go to the case study for the Ikea commercial, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yes. Åkestam Holst, we talked about that a little bit,
but you also have humor as a value, right?
Yeah, we do. We have humor, but we're very focused on the culture and the humanity, and also in the recent years, I think one of the things why we are so successful, as we've been the last couple of years, also that we work a lot of with equality and diversity, because I believe if we are to make ads for Sweden, who doesn't look like it did 30 years ago, we need to have representation in our work groups. And I think we have that. And I think for us, I think it would have been difficult, for example, to produce or develop a concept like for Ikea, if you don't have that it needs to be in your DNA, sort of.
This is interesting because for those of you who saw the session with Alex Mahon, the CEO of Channel 4 yesterday, one of the pillars of her entry at Channel 4 has been the question of diversity in relation to creativity, right? Not just what's on screen, because she wants to get more representation on screen, but because she fundamentally believes that diversity of viewpoints are essential for creative flowering, which is essentially what we're saying.
I'm 100% sure that it is, and we can see that in our results.
Right.
But it's that, and also long-term relationships. Our relationships with clients are minimum 7 years, and then you build trust, and then they get excited and can trust us so we can push the boundaries a bit.
Yes, and it also so you get very, very close to the business. We think of ourselves as producers as being close to the broadcasters, but we certainly don't have a solo relationship with the broadcaster for the last 7 years, right? But you get very into the business very deeply, right?
Very, and I think, and there are some agencies in Sweden that are, but we are working with, we have doctors and PhDs who are working with strategy and planning at the agency, because for us, and I think you have to do that. If you have long-term relationships, you need to see that the work we're doing are actually showing itself on the bottom line.
Right.
So for us, that's 50%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's segue now into what you're going to see is a case study prepared by Åkestam Holst for the IKEA campaign Where Life Happens. And I think you will see two things, one which may be obvious to you. The first is that case studies, which are like show reels for advertising agencies and their clients, are presented in a very different language to the one that we saw from Iain with driving school. And the second thing is that you will notice that the video component is only part of the ecosystem of the total conversation between the brand and the client. So let's look at Petronella's tape.
Life, the beauty of it, the hardships, the joys, the endless possibilities. In our integrated campaign for 2017, we set out to be even closer to everyday life by challenging the stories we tell as well as the traditional ad formats. Like this print ad that also worked as an interactive pregnancy test, offering a better deal on a crib.
This next story is a little strange, to say the least.
IKEA has come up with an odd way to attract parents-to-be.
That's right. You're not seeing things. If you're pregnant, you pee on the ad.
But family life can start in various ways. In film, we chose to portray a single mother longing for a child. As all families know, the everyday isn't always a smooth ride. So, we decided to show that it's a natural part of life too.
Let the sun shadow the pain. The sky of colors after the rain. It's a beautiful life.
Sometimes you need to escape the everyday. You turn to YouTube, but then the dreaded 5-second TrueView ads make life even more boring. So, we turned them into something people just couldn't stop watching instead.
Ska vi verkligen kolla på det här? Du vet att du kan hoppa över det här.
The actors in these over 5-minute ads are so aware of the pointless content that they beg you to skip them. But instead, the average viewing rate was over 3 minutes, far above industry average. And 39% of the viewers even watched the whole ad. Life online can be a struggle. When it comes to banners, surveys state that over 60% of clicks are accidental. So we made banners that were actually honest. Instead of directing people to a place they didn't want to go, Ikea kindly asked if that was really their intention. We showed that everyday life can be beautiful, no matter if it's just begun or if it's in its final stages. By telling honest stories about the everyday life, Ikea showed that they understand how their customers live in the real world and that their solutions are there to help you.
Let's dance. Put on your red shoes.
And often, it's the small things that matter. Thanks for watching. And most of all, thanks for inspiring us.
So, congratulations. I think that's really, really beautiful. I was struck by the pre-rolled ads, those scenes from domestic life, about the closeness to real life and the closeness to what probably some of us in the audience would have thought of as the European soap opera tradition, like a slice of life very close to the experience of everyday people, and reflecting not only the dilemmas of everyday life, but some of the social pressures and social dilemmas on life as well. You are taking this campaign and have taken it into more and more socially and politically sensitive areas. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yes, but we believe it. Like I said, you know, it's hard. There's not many brands who dare to dramatize the reality, the way it looks. So we are trying to, and some are about divorces, some about. Like we saw the adoption, adoption.
Yes,
adoption when you adopt a child. So it is about everything, and I think coming from Sweden, as I said, where it's dark 6 months of the year, it's hard to tell a story about real life without people really falling asleep out of boredom. So for us, it's been a huge. So if you've done that, then you won. But it is important to get close to life, to really dare to do that, because that's what IKEA stands for. In this case, it is about the values of IKEA. And we managed to do that in a way. But of course, some of the topics maybe was that appreciated in some countries. So, but at least raise the discussions. We could discuss it and take it further.
So talk to us a bit about that. The one about divorce, you were saying it was quite sensitive in a country like Italy, for example.
Yes, because of the religion, and they don't want to speak about that they actually are having divorces. They have just as many divorces as we have in Sweden. But it's just to dare to talk about these topics. And I feel that people can just relax in it. Okay, it's not just me. Everyone has it.
One of the things that I think struck me about it was the way that the furniture, the product itself, is the background and the context in which these stories happen, not the main subject of the story.
No, exactly. And that has to do with IKEA is a very loved brand, but is more loved than their products. And in a very competitive market, it's hard for them to have enough share of voice to do commercials about every product. So this was a way for us to show the products in a matter-of-fact day-to-day life. For us, it has also been very important to work, as I talked about the long-term relationships. For us, it's been very important to work with a producer, a director and a production company, in this case Bacon and Martin Werner, who has been along all the way, because even there you build trust and you build knowledge. And if it works, you know, keep on doing this, because the films and the concept gets just better and better and better.
Can I ask you a question? Were the films the same films shown in each country, or were they in fact formats like MIPFormats, where you made similar films but actually country-specific films?
No, everyone was exactly the same in
so
all
you
countries.
Used the Swedish
Yeah, we
material.
used the Swedish version. It wasn't shown in every country in Europe. The US market are doing some other. They're not even using our concept in a way. But where it was shown, it was exactly the same way. And we also learned to take, you know, for the True View ads, for example, learn how to use the material in a different way, not showing exactly the ad as it is. Work with it, work the formats. Get to know the data behind it and try to work around it.
That's great. Let's come back to the data in a little while when we open up the conversation. Mikko, Pietila, you're the Executive Creative Director of TBWA Helsinki. you've just won a whole slew of awards at the Finnish Advertising Awards, not least of which best agency in Finland. Congratulations! But the project we're going to look at was super successful. Can you just introduce it very briefly? Who's the tell us about the agency and how you think about advertising, and then we'll show the clip and talk about Life in Hell.
TBWA as a network is of course known for disruption. I think we kind of patented the word back in the day or something like that. So we are about disrupting the marketplace and disrupting our clients' business. But we at Helsinki are of course part of the network, but we believe also that we need to disrupt ourselves a bit. We need to find new ways to connect with people, and as with you guys as well, we are really into involving brands with culture. And we believe that that is the thing that really matters. And as with this case, of course, we need to make Helsinki Airport famous in China. But therefore, we needed to look into the cultural connections. How could we actually do that so that it's relatable and it's fun to watch? Because if you take a brand from Helsinki, from Finland, and you just push it to China in a traditional way, you need millions and millions of euros to do the paid media. So we needed to be clever, and by really looking in and tapping into the culture, again, we found a way to kind of break through in the really, really fragmented market.
Okay, so let's just to what I think is interesting about the Life in Hell project is that it essentially is a brand producing a reality show as part of an ongoing dialogue with its consumers, and indeed getting advice from people who work in reality television, like myself, in the conceiving of it. So let's show Mikko's case study for Life in Hell.
People hate being stuck at the airport. The longer they stay, the worse. Helsinki Airport has been internationally acclaimed. Its fastest growing market is China, as Helsinki Airport is the shortest route between east and west. What if someone would be stuck at the airport for an entire month? What if he could test and evaluate that airport without any moderation?
I still can't sleep.
And what if the whole thing could be witnessed by millions?
Kiinalainen elokuvatähti Ryan Zhu
asuu siis kuukauden Helsinki-Vantaan lentokentällä
vajaan 8 neliön puumökissä.
Life in Hell, a different kind of airport reality, where the Terminal and Truman Show meet Survivor. The star of the campaign, Ryan Chu, a Chinese influencer and TV personality. He lived inside the airport for 30 days and streamed his experience live on social media. Ryan lived in a custom-built cabin inside Hell and was prompted with new tasks every day.
Your first task is to find your cabin.
I'm Ryan.
Nice to meet you. You will make a tutorial workout for travelers.
He had unlimited and unfiltered access to Helsinki Airport's social media, both in China and Western markets. It's tricky to have an impact on a Chinese audience without a vast media budget, so we relied on PR and effective influencer mechanics. And soon, Life in Hell started to pop up on Western media too. Life in Hell turned Helsinki Airport into a phenomenon in China and globally. Stopovers are still a mandatory pain in the arse if you're flying long haul, but if you're traveling via Hell, you might never want to leave.
在这边我已经觉得已经是我的家了。
Right, congratulations. So, you really, essentially, you produced a month-long reality show,
Exactly,
a documentary that summed it up, right?
Yeah.
Basically. Was it a difficult sell to your client? Who is your client, by the way?
Yeah, clients, Finavia's, actually what I want to say at this point is that without the bravery of our client, and especially one Katja Seberg, who is the SVP of the Finavia and basically the CMO of the whole brand, without the bravery and the kind of, I would say, really like stripping down the inhibitions of the whole thinking of your brand situation, what the clients usually have. They want to break boundaries, so when we introduced the concept, they were actually like, yeah, let's do it. And that's the point where we actually got a bit scared, like, hey, wait a minute, if we're really going to do this, we need to be transparent from end to end. If we're going to take this guy, put him in the airport to live there and test the services for Chinese travelers, if the services are not actually that good, then it's going to show in the content because it's reality TV. And they were like, yeah, we're just really ready to make the services that good that the guy will enjoy himself.
And indeed, he gave feedback at the end of his stay there, and they have adapted the airport in response to his feedback, right?
Yes, I think the guy did like, it was like a really long survey and really had like thorough interviews with the peeps on the airport as well. And now they're developing certain services for Chinese travelers to be better. For an example, expanding the space of the terminal as well and bringing in more hot water points and bringing in more Chinese cuisine as well.
So you were consciously looking at a genre which would be very familiar to most of us in this room. I mean, you were consciously looking at the kind of reality television genre.
Yes, we were. But the one thing we realized that in the go as well is that we're ad men, we're ad guys. Of course, we're great at doing ads and brand storytelling. But if we're going to do this, we need some help from somebody who has actually done a bunch of things in the reality TV industry. So funny thing is that we called this guy over here, and Gary answered. So we actually sit our client down with Gary there to go through the ins and outs of the reality TV and also the pitfalls that might happen to gain some really crucial insight when we were building the campaign.
Okay. So, Petronella, when you were developing the video components to Where Life Happens, did you feel you were referring to any other form of audiovisual entertainment? Did you feel you were borrowing from social realism or from movie making or the Swedish tradition of social realism?
Yeah, we did in a way, but we also did 2 years ago, we did not a reality show, but for Ikea, The Kitchen, we did a food series. So of course, we tested that out and looked at and have looked at it. But if you find a concept like Where Life Happens, it's fairly easy to be imaginative and try to reinvent it all the time in different channels and different executions.
So let's open it up now, Mikko. Just to start with, when we see a show like that, when we see a case study like that, we see this quite substantial piece of video material situated in an ecosystem of conversations, right? And even the show itself, if it's a show, Ryan, the airport testing itself. The airport becomes a character, the airport becomes the precinct, Ryan tests, the airport tests itself with a human subject and makes changes
exactly
as a result.
like that.
You have the objective view of that produced as a reality series, and you have his subjective conversation going through his own channels back to the audience, right? You have two conversations going.
Yeah.
And around that, you have a whole other ecosystem of activity to market.
Yes, of course, we had
the whole thing.
Board
Can you
media.
talk us about that?
Board media, of course, we have extensive channel, clutter basically of social channels. We had the basic social channels in the Western markets, Facebook, Instagrams, whatnots, and of course in China we had Baidu, WeChat, everything.
Did you have any paid television coverage?
No paid television coverage, and actually we had, like, compared to the magnitude of the campaign outreach, the paid media was substantially low, and we relied on interesting stories that we are pushing to influencers and media constantly to different markets. And actually what was interesting is that the whole campaign content itself was augmented through data as the campaign went ahead. We saw what people actually got interested in, what the discussions in China are about the campaign, and saw what people are interested in. And then we tweaked the content to the next episodes.
So, Petronella, you talked you touched on the use of data in your agency's work. Can you say a little bit more about how you worked with the data on this campaign?
We don't have a data science department, but we have planners working with data in a creative way. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we know we knew about the true views, how to use that. You know, everyone is skipping it. Mm-hmm. So how can we do that? What's the everyday life situation if you were to make a true view format for us? Well, it would be to show how it actually is, and it worked. And we know that a lot of people are Googling their problems, family problems. So my husband is falling asleep on the couch. So we were sitting online, a group trying to. So we what do you call it, named the products after that problem. So that calls retail therapy. So when he Googled that, or she Googled that, then you got a stool from Ikea, 59. My daughter needs to learn how to ride. Okay, then you have a piece of paper. So we renamed everything, and that's from the data, looking at relationships.
So this is the kind of thinking that I think so few of us in our community do, right? Is to understand, have the capacity to do this kind of research and this kind of thinking. And as we move into a digital future, but also into closer relationships with brands, we will need to have certain skills that are currently sitting, I would say, with the newer generation of agencies. So just to wrap up, I wonder if you could, Mikko, give us your observations of working with television people in a kind of television genre and coming to this market. Just very briefly, Petronella, what it's been like for you to come to this environment?
Yeah, I think the thing for me was that we're actually kind of working currently, especially with the whole branded content shift, we're working in a similar environment, so to speak. But from what I feel is that kind of we in advertising have started to adapt your guys' mechanics on storytelling and on actually, and then used our professionality on how to integrate the brands into the entertainment space, and I'm like currently now really eagerly waiting on how the broadcast industry is going to be starting to kind of take the ins and outs of advertising, because you guys could have, some of your like big corporations could have easily done the Life in Hell format, sold it to Finavia, but not with the TV angle, because the channels are there. It's not just linear TV. It's all around in the social media.
Petronella? No, I just feel that it's a huge opportunity for those who actually wants to understand the way we work and want to build a long-term relationships. I think advertising industry is about maybe 10 or 15 years ahead of you. I do.
There you
I
go,
do.
peeps. All right, Iain, any reflections from you?
I mean, I just I disagree with you. No, I like what Mikko was saying about trust and bravery. I think that's important, and certainly in my experience, that was the key asset that all parties had to have.
Okay. Alex, final words?
I'll give you something scary. I met someone the other day who'd invented a piece of artificial intelligence which can watch TV, and every time it sees an object, it can buy the Google AdWord for that object instantly, so that when you're sitting at home and you see that stool, you type stool in, half a second before you did that, the computer that was watching TV had bought the AdWord and sells you the stool.
Very good. So, thank you very, very much for joining us. I hope you have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye.